Hello everyone. Today we are going to spend our third day on the quadratic formula and get ready for a quiz tomorrow. So we're going to start with an application problem that is a pretty involved equation that we would definitely not be able to factor. So we would have to use the quadratic formula anyway. Now you're not going to see any equations this challenging or difficult with all these decimals on the quiz. But if you can do this one, the rest will be easier. So this application says a diver begins on a platform 10 meters above the surface of the water. I see a typo there. The diver's height is given by the equation h sub t equals negative 4.9 t squared plus 3.5 t plus 10, where t is the time in seconds after the diver jumps. So you have your diver up here, and here's your diver. They're going to jump up, and then they're going to go down. Okay, and so this horizontal line right there, that's like your y-axis. So where that diver's standing is really your y-intercept. That diver's standing at 10 feet. We know that because this in standard form is the y-intercept. So we know that this is 10 feet. They gave us that. But this is our height that the diver is, and the x-axis right here is our time. So if we want to know, find the time it takes the diver to reach the water, what we want to know is we want to know this point. We want to know that x-intercept. And so what we do is we find the value of x where the y is 0. So we have to set this equation equal to 0. Remember, all of your equations, to use the quadratic formula, you have to make sure they equal 0. So sometimes you have to add and subtract numbers from one side to the other to get it equal to 0. So I'm going to set this equation equal to 0. Now this one is already in standard form, so I don't need to add or subtract to get it equal to 0. Okay, so now I am just going to use the quadratic formula to solve. So x equals the opposite of b. Well, b is 3.5, so this is going to be negative 3.5, plus or minus the square root. So now I have to take my b and square it. Always put that in parentheses. And on tomorrow's quiz, you are going to be submitting your scratch paper. So you're going to need to show me all of these values, a, b, and c, plugged in correctly to the quadratic formula. And that's going to be 3 out of your 5 points just for showing your work. So make sure you submit it, make sure you do it on paper, and make sure you certainly practice it today. So we plug in our a, b, c into the quadratic formula. So now we simplify. Again, my biggest hint to you guys too is to just type this entire thing with the parentheses into your calculator. And if you do that, all of that part right there becomes 208. So all of this under the square root is 208.25. And again, practice entering that. So now our equation becomes x equals negative 3.5 plus or minus the square root of 208, not 28, 208.25, all divided by, and when we multiply the two numbers on the bottom, we get negative 9.8. Okay, so now we have to get a decimal value for the square root of 208.25. So when we type that into our calculator, we always are going to round. Anytime we get a decimal in our calculation, we're going to round to 2 places. So that's going to give us 4.43, all divided by negative 9.8. So here's our 2 cases coming up. So we have to take negative 3.5 plus 4.43 divided by negative 9.8. Don't forget you're going to need to push equals in your calculator. If you don't get a value for your numerator separately, you're going to need to make sure you type in equals. And then we also have to take negative 3.5 minus 4.43, all divided by negative 9.8. So what we get for our two values is we get negative 1.12 for the second one. And for this top one, we get our x value is equal to 1.83 seconds. So these are all seconds. So one of these doesn't make sense. That's because it's way over, that's because the diver started 10 feet up. So we have a negative x-intercept, so that's not going to be our time. So the time it takes for that diver to reach the ground is 1.83 seconds. Please feel free to message me or email me with any questions about how to enter this, or why did you get that? How come this is negative? What, I don't understand. Things like that, okay? Because you want to be prepared for the quiz. You want to try to keep up. We got another month of school at least, so a little more than a month. So let's try to keep moving forward here. All right, so we answered the first question. We found the x-intercepts. Then the second question says, when is the diver at their maximum height in the dive, and what is their maximum height? Now you might be thinking, well, it's 10 feet, but the diver goes up from where he's standing at 10 feet. So we can kind of estimate that it's going to be a little bit greater than 10. But what we're finding there is we're actually finding the vertex. So here is the vertex, and that's what we're finding. Now you're not going to have to do that on the quiz tomorrow, but let's just review. When we have it in standard form, the vertex, the ordered pair, the axis symmetry, you got negative b over 2a, that's the x part of the vertex. Then you plug that value in for your x value in your equation to get the y. So to find the vertex here, I'm going to take the opposite of b again, negative 3.5, all over 2 times a, which is, a value is negative 4.9. Oops. Let me clean that up a little bit. Okay, so that is the x part of my vertex. So again, calculating all of that for my vertex, that is going to give me an x value of 0.36 seconds. So there's my x. So now I just plug that value in to get my y. So I go back to this original equation right here, and I type in 0.36 for my t, or x squared. So I'm going to have negative 4.9 times 0.36 squared plus 3.5 times 0.36 plus 10. And all of that equals 10.62 meters. So there's my y value at that vertex. So I found how long it takes the diver to get to that maximum height and what it is. So there it is right there. Well, that was supposed to be a different color, and they're being difficult, so there you go. Okay, so there's your number of seconds and your height. So we found when the diver is at their maximum height, 0.36 seconds, and that maximum height is 10.62 meters. So that's a pretty complicated one. Again, you will not have equations that difficult, but you just have to plug things in and use your calculator, and you'll be fine. And remember, you're going to be turning in your scratch paper. So your homework today is to actually do a practice quiz. It's in Schoology, so you'll find it, and I'll put an answer key out there as well, but it's to prepare for the quiz. So make sure that you're going back and watching any of the quadratic formula videos that you need to. You just need to focus on the quadratic formula and solving, but make sure you always are putting your equations equal to 0, and that you know when you're going to get no solution. And there's one other type of thing we're going to ask you to do on the quiz, and I'm going to go through that right now. And what that is it's picking out A, B, and C from your quadratic formula when they're already plugged in. So if you look at this, this is a sample question from the quiz. It says, based on the work information you see below and ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, what does a, b, and c equal? Well, remember, you have to go back to your quadratic formula that goes x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, your a is going to be the number right here multiplied. So my a is 1, okay? My b is the opposite of this number out here. So I'll use a different color here. My b is this, or my b squared is this. So this is b squared. So what would we square to get 25? Well, 5. Okay, and it fits in here because it's the opposite of 5. So if this said positive 5, then you would know that b is the opposite of that and negative. So you got to kind of think about that a little bit. And then your c value is the number at the end. So here's your c right there. Here's your c. So your c is negative 7. Okay, let's try another one. So your a value. Okay, your a value is probably the easiest to look at on the bottom of the fraction, the 2a part. So that's going to be negative 3. Your b value. Your b value is what is squared. So I don't have anything squared here. I don't have like a negative b over here. And I don't have, all I have here is the minus 4ac part. So what happened to b? Well, b is actually 0, because then we would have the opposite of 0, which we would just cancel out. And we would have b squared in here, minus 4ac. But again, if b was 0 squared, then we wouldn't have that. We would just cancel that out. So b is 0 in that case, all right? And last but not least, probably another pretty easy one to pick out, your c is at the end, so here's your c of 5. So that's the goal for today, is to prepare for the quiz tomorrow. Let me know if you have questions, message me or email me, and be sure to continue to watch and rewatch the videos and complete the work. Have a great day.